Starting a video is always so awkward. But hey, Happy New Year! It is January 1st, 2026. This is my best reads of 2025. In 2025, I read 31 books, which is very fitting because I turned 31 in 2025. And that is actually the most amount of books that I've read since, in recent history, because I've only started tracking my reading since 2017 on Goodreads. And that year I read 20 books. And so I have not read that many since. So 31 is like the most that I've read in almost a decade, which is crazy. 2017 was almost 10 years ago. But anyway, so I'm going to share with you guys my best books of 2025. If you're not following me on Instagram, you should. I'll put a link in the description and I'll also put it on the screen. But I did a 2025 bookish superlatives post. So these are the books from that post. I didn't count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 books. So yeah, we're just gonna get started and I'm going to use that post to help me with this video. Also, sometimes I read books and what the book was about just gets away from me and I did not refresh myself before this video. So we're just gonna go with it. I'm not gonna be super try hard perfectionist in 2025. We're just gonna chill and actually just work on doing the thing, you know. So we're gonna start. First book is Best Romance, and that is A Love Song for Ricky Wilde by Tia Williams. If you have been on this channel, then you know that this was, when I read it, like my favorite book. It became my favorite book ever, which is a big thing to say. I really have to think about all the books that I've ever read, but I love this book so much. A book hadn't made me feel so many things since I read Nicola Yoon's Like the Sun Is Also a Star back in 2019, maybe, I don't know, but I read this book and I fell in love with it. It is, I put it in the romance category, but it's a mixture of things. It has historical fiction in it, it has magical realism in it, and it has a romance. But what I love about the romance is that the romance is not the main part of the plot. And also I love that the story itself is written, it's not like one of those easy to read, like fluffy. If you love fluffy romances, that's great, that's fine. I'm not knocking that at all, because sometimes for me that's needed too, so I don't have to, you know, think so hard about things. But I love that the book makes you think. Like, it's not just gonna hand something to you. It's not hard to read, but it's also not something that you can just go into without putting a little bit of effort into it. And so I think some people read it and they didn't like it for that reason. They thought there was too much going on. They had read Tia Williams' other books like 7 Days in June, and I guess they didn't like the magical, the unrealistic aspect of it. But I loved it. And basically it is about Ricky Wilde, who we have the same initials. Ricky Wilde, who is the daughter of very rich black entrepreneurs in Atlanta. They own a funeral home business, and she's like the odd one out in her family. She has been ostracized for that essentially, but she just decides that she wants to march to the beat of her own drum. She ends up moving to Harlem, New York, and opens a flower shop to make her own way. There's a person that she meets, and this person is like the link to a past that involves Ricky, and a romance ensues, and the romance has some like fantastical magical elements in it that are just really unbelievable. I can't give too much away, but if you like 1920s, like Harlem Renaissance type stuff, you'll love this book. So I gave it 5 stars when I read it. I still love it, and I'm gonna read to you on the post that I made on Instagram. Again, follow me on Instagram. I put quotes by every book selection that I gave that kind of, I feel, shows like the book's character. Hopefully it will entice people to read them even more. But for this one, I said, or I used the quotes, it says, "But identity changes all the time, I found. There's a few more yous you haven't met yet." And the second quote is, "Thing is, men stay thinking that women are supporting characters in their story. Ever think you were just a character in hers?" Okay. It was so good. If you have not read this book, please, please, please Put it on your 2026 TBR. You will not be disappointed. And Tia Williams also has another book coming out, The Missed Connection, which I will be reading because at this point she's an auto-buy author for me. So our next book, I gave the superlative most likely to cause an existential crisis. And I love this book so much. So this book, it wasn't personally recommended to me, but I've been watching Kat's Field Notes a lot in 2025. And she's really into literary fiction, which I did not know that I was also into. I read, what's the name of that book? It's over here somewhere. My Year of Rest and Relaxation, and I did not know that that was literary fiction. But when I realized what literary fiction was, kind of like books that don't really have a strong plot. It's more about how the words, the sentences, the structure of the narrative evokes a feeling in you. Then I was like, okay, that's what I liked about that book. So I was like, maybe I like literary fiction, so let me read some more. So I because of Kat, I ordered Perfection by Vincenzo Latronico, and I hope I didn't butcher his name, but she read this book, or I think she recommended it. She talked about it in her video, and whatever she said about it made me want to read it. So I read it, and I did love it. So again, I gave this book most likely to cause an existential crisis. There's only like 2 little tab marks in here, but trust me, I was underlining and highlighting all throughout. So to explain what it's about, again, this is literary fiction, and to me, when I think of literary fiction, that is a genre that's not really so much about a plot. Like, it's not plot driven. It's more about big ideas and big thoughts. The traditional narrative format, like you have your opening, you have your rising action, your climax, your falling action, and the resolution. That's not really how this is. It's actually very open-ended, as was My Year of Rest and Relaxation, which I like. I don't always want easy answers. I kind of want to think about stuff. I want to be left to fill in the blanks myself. But this book was about a couple. They are expatriates. I guess they live in Europe. They were from another part of Europe and then they relocated to somewhere else in Europe. I don't understand how that, like, I guess I understand how it works, but because I'm in America and America's just America, like, I don't know the country hopping that they do over there. We don't really do that here, or at least I don't. When I was over there, I'm going on a tangent. I studied abroad in Europe when I was in college, and I realized then, I don't know if it's still the case, but the flights to get around once you're over there were very cheap in 2016. So it makes sense to me that people like just kind of, they're living in London and they may go to Paris on vacation. To us, that sounds wild, but people do that. Anyway, these people lived in some part of Europe and then they relocated to Berlin. And it's they're millennials. I would say they're probably like the elder millennials, so they would be up there with my brother. And it's just kind of about like the millennial experience. And what struck me about the book is that what's happening to these people in Berlin, Germany, is the exact experience that I'm having over here in America in a different font. Like I felt seen. I also felt like everything is pointless. I felt like just connected, like I'm not the only person that's experiencing these things. And I'll read the back of it to you because I don't know if I'm doing this a good job of this, but it says Anna and Tom, an expat couple, have fashioned a dream life for themselves in Berlin. They are young digital creatives exploring the excitements of the city, freelancers without too many constraints who spend their free time cultivating houseplants and their images online. At first, they reasonably deduce that they've turned their passion for aesthetics into a viable, even enviable career, but the years go by and Anna and Tom grow bored. As their friends move back home or move on, their own work and sex life and the life of Berlin itself begin to lose their luster. An attempt to put their politics into action fizzles in embarrassed self-doubt. Edging closer to 40, they try living as digital nomads, only to discover that wherever they go, the brand of oat milk in their flat whites was the same. Perfection, Vincenzo Latronico's first book to be translated into English, is a scathing novel about contemporary existence, a tale of 2 people gradually waking up to find themselves in various traps, wondering how it all came to be. Was it a lack of foresight, or were they just born too late? So I hope that gave you a little bit of context for the book. It was eye-opening. there was one part in here in particular that was discussing, there was some big political movement, as there always is, that was happening in Berlin. It had something to do with refugees. I had never, honestly, this probably bad on my part that I'm not aware of like world matters, that much. I'm always focused on what's happening in America. But whatever was going on in the book with the refugees, the way that they jumped into action and, they finally felt like they had this purpose, this sense of purpose to make the wrong things right and to, the things that they'd seen on TV happening in other places, there's something happening in their backyard now that they can be a part of and do something about. It reminded me so much of the Black Lives Matter movement back in 2020, because when it was happening, I was just like, and I was in that. It was just like everybody was at a fever pitch with their activism or their performative activism. And I think a lot of it had to do with COVID, us being in the house. And it was just like the perfect formula for something like that to happen. And the way that 5 years, actually now 6 years later in the future, we are washing Black Lives Matter off the streets. Like it was all just, it was a phase. It became commodified or commoditized, whatever the right word for that is. It was just bizarre the way people got so into this thing. And then over time, you just kind of move on from it. And it leaves you feeling uneasy about what even was the point of all of that, That in this book, like that was one of the things, one of many things. And it's not that long. The book is only like 120 something pages. There's so many different things. It talks about social media. It talks about like friendships. It talks about careers, and it's just like it's so relatable. And so I really enjoyed this. It's not a book that's hard to read, but if you prefer a book that has a very strong plot, like a good story, you might not like this book. But if you just kind of want to feel seen, it might make you feel a little bit like everything is pointless. I already felt that way, so it wasn't like shocking to me. It didn't make me feel, like bad. But if you're a person that's super optimistic and you just kind of like, you don't want to think about the things that this book makes you think about, then maybe you don't want to read it. But I loved it. I don't remember my rating for it. It was probably more than 4 stars, probably 4.5, something like that. But we're not really going to talk about ratings too much in this video either, because they don't matter. All of these books are really good. So they're all 4 stars and up. And if it's a 5-star, I'll tell you. But I do want to read the quote that I picked for this, because it will give you an idea of, like, again, hopefully it sells the book for you. It says, they would spend hours building personal websites and profiles that reflected their taste and interest. Lists of things that made them special. This passion of theirs. Okay, let me go back. So the 2 people this book centers around, their names are Anna and Tom. They're a couple, and they work in the digital sphere. It's very hard for them to explain exactly what they do for work, but we know what they do for work. It's kind of like they're branding people. They're in that, like, I don't want to say content creation, but they're in that, like, that area where it's hard to define it. But there's been, because of the advent of media, digital media, there's been this, like, creation of these new jobs. So they work with companies helping them with their branding, basically. And so this quote is basically talking about their skills and what they do and how it came about because of the era in which they grew up. And it says they would spend hours building personal websites and profiles that reflected their taste and interest, lists of things that made them special. This passion of theirs wasn't learned. It was a natural consequence of the context in which they had grown up. Anna and Tom had grown up with the notion that individuality manifested itself as a set of visual differences, immediately decodable and in constant need of updating. They were well prepared by the time the demand to express what makes each person special had spread from teenage online profile pages to brands, companies, shops, and professionals all over the world. I felt that. I don't know about you. All right. So next we have, I talked about this at length at the beginning of the year because this was my first read of the year, Best Memoir, and that is Dinner for Vampires, Life on a Cult TV Show while also in an actual cult by Bethany Joy Lenz. If you don't know who she is, she played, I forgot her name, on One Tree Hill, which I started watching and then never completed when I was younger. But also, she's in my favorite Christmas movie of all time, A Biltmore Christmas. And I don't know, I saw her, I don't know what came first, the book or the movie, but I'm pretty sure I saw her in the movie. I saw her in A Biltmore Christmas and I looked her up because her acting was fantastic. And then I saw that, oh, she was in One Tree Hill, and oh, she has a book. And then I was in Barnes and Noble and I happened to see the book in Barnes and Noble, so I just bought the book and I read it. And I did not expect what I got with this. This was a 5-star read because I love reading people's memoirs. It's a great way. I hate to say tea, but like, I think there's no better way to learn about things than to learn from other people. And I think memoirs are just their gifts because you get to read about somebody else's life and glean like their wisdom and things like that. So this book, basically, she was born into a evangelical Christian family, very much like myself. She was raised in church, so church speak is normal, is to her. So a lot of the words and phrases she was using in the book, she was explaining to the reader in case you didn't have that background, but I have that background, so I knew what she was talking about. And so eventually, as time goes on, she gets into acting, and while she's in acting, she's kind of trying to find a home in Hollywood, and she falls in with this Bible study group. And I think she said it was Bible study gone sideways or something like that. Basically, they started off kind of teaching from the Bible, and then the leaders just kind of veered and did their own thing. And because she was so young and impressionable, it really just showed how easy it is to influence and essentially almost control someone's mind. Psychological warfare. It was wild to read, but it was also very healing because as I've gotten older, you know, if you've been raised in church or maybe some other faith, then you know that you're going to get to a point in life where you're just like, why do I, you know, my parents brought me up in this, but do I actually believe it? And I think a lot of us get to that point, most people. And even the Bible itself says to have a reason for why you believe what you believe. And so this book was really, I did not know which way it was going to go. I was like, for her to have gone through all this stuff, I would have, you know, probably left the church. I probably would have just left Christianity. But I was nervous to see what happened to her. And the answer to the question that I had about what was going to happen to her was more beautiful than I could have expected. She's an amazing person. This refreshed my faith, actually. And I think that whether you are a Christian or not, like, you should read this book. I don't think that it's something like, you know, I know that Christianity has left a bad taste in some people's mouths, especially with what's going on in the world currently, in this country currently. But I feel like I can say that she's not like that. Like, this feels very authentic. I feel like this is what more people need to read, you know, to sift through the noise and the whatever. So yeah, it was really good. And the quote from this that I wanted to read says, I think we're all little cathedrals of contradiction. Terrifying darkness and shocking beauty coexist in everyone, and God doesn't wait for us to clean out all the bad before celebrating the good. It's scandalous, really, that kind of love. And that is Dinner for Vampires, best memoir, 5 stars. So then we have our sleeper hits. So by that, I mean these are books that I just did not... First of all, the first book that I'm going to tell you about, I just didn't know it existed. I was in the book warehouse earlier this year in January, I'm pretty sure. Earlier last year, because in January, I'm pretty sure. And I saw it, and it was about Alabama, and I grew up in Alabama, so I was like, okay, I want to read it. But I didn't know it existed. I didn't know if it would be good. I just picked it off vibes, the cover. It had a nice blurb on the front, and I was like, okay, let me go with it. And that is Gods in Alabama by Jocelyn Jackson. Basically, this book is about a woman. Her name is Arlene Fleet. She's from a rural place in Alabama, and she leaves to go up north, wherever Chicago is. I'm pretty sure she goes to Chicago. Yes. To pursue her PhD, but she leaves because something terrible happened to her, or happened in Alabama, and she made a promise to God that if he got her out of there safely, she wouldn't return. So it's been years and she hasn't gone back, but now she has to. Something happens, I forgot what happened, but she has to go home. And you know, it's kind of like all that, you know, relatives, family drama, you know, She's also in an interracial relationship, which is interesting, with her boyfriend being, or is she engaged? She's in an interracial relationship. Her boyfriend's from Chicago. She's from Alabama, so you can, and she's white. He's black, so you can imagine the dynamics there in terms of her family and him. But it was really good. It shocked me. It shocked me because I didn't know this book existed, and I think that I've gotten so used to just seeing what's trending on BookTube and Book Talk, and just, I don't know, when you go on Goodreads and you see what it's being like given to you or shown to you to look at. But this was very refreshing and I enjoyed it a lot. The quote from this book that I wanted to read to you, it says, and this is actually the opening line of the book, best opening line I've read in a while. It says, "There are gods in Alabama, Jack Daniels, high school quarterbacks, trucks, big tatas, and also Jesus." That was the very first line. Like, there are a lot of things, they be Christian, I guess, in Alabama, but they love their football and their beers, and yeah, so that was pretty cool. And then the next book is actually, I think my camera's going to die soon and I'm kind of nervous. The next book that is a sleeper hit is The Secret Keeper of Main Street. This is a historical fiction novel that my fiance actually bought me. He knows I like historical fiction, but I know myself and I'm very particular about what I read, so I didn't have high hopes for it, but I was I was pleasantly surprised. So he did a really good job. This book is only 270 something pages, I think, so it's not that long, but it really packs a punch. It's about Bailey. She's a seamstress in, I think it's Oklahoma, an oil town. And she has a special ability to be able to kind of see the future of the people that she comes in physical contact with. So she works in a bridal shop. So a lot of brides will come in and ask her questions or try to get her to tell them about their future. And she doesn't like to get in their business because it's the 1950s. She's black, they're white. She just doesn't want those problems. But then she gets in somebody's business. And there's just a lot of things that happen in the story. I can't even remember all of it. And for it to have been 270 something pages, a lot happened. But it was also expounded upon very well. So I enjoyed this book and I highly recommend it. And the quote that I have from it is, "Believe it or not, I understand how you feel," Bailey said. "I'm scared too of just about everything. But I get by. I wake up every morning and step out of the door and live my life. That's all you have to do, Elsa. Live your life. You don't have to decide all of it once, just one day at a time." Beautiful, because I feel that. Okay, camera definitely died. We're going to pick up where we left off, and that is best historical fiction. So this book I read also in January. It was my second read of the year, and that is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This was great. When I read this, I remember feeling like it was a movie that was playing in my head. This was my first Taylor Jenkins Reid novel ever. And now, because of this, and also because of Carrie Soto, I have to continue to read her books. Basically, it's set in the 1950s, I'm pretty sure. Yes, in Los Angeles in the 1950s, so like the golden Hollywood era. And I love that. Like it was giving very much like Marilyn Monroe, Elizabeth Taylor type vibes. I believe she was actually Evelyn Hugo was loosely drawn from Elizabeth Taylor. But it was just really cool. And the book is separated because she had 7 husbands. Each section of the book is sectioned off by husband. So those are the eras of the book. And I immediately was like, this could be a limited TV series. I know there's something that's supposed to be coming out. I don't know if it's a movie or if it's a limited series, but I think it would work best as a limited TV series with 7 episodes. That'd be awesome. 7 or 8. But yeah, this was really good. And I don't want to give too much about it away because there's something in here that I did that's a huge part of the story, integral to the story, that I don't think was mentioned. It's not mentioned on the back of the book, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. But if you love historical fiction, if you love old Hollywood, if you love movies playing in your head when you read books because that is being described that well, this is the book for you. And also, when I finished it, I was really sad because I wanted to go and watch her movies. It felt like Evelyn Hugo was a real person. And that is a talent, I feel like, to create a character and have the character transcend, the fictional aspect of them. It's almost like Olivia Pope, like the whole show Scandal. I feel like B613, people talk about things like that like they're real entities and they're not. That's how I felt about Evelyn Hugo. And so I really just wanted to go watch her movies, but I couldn't, which was very disappointing. But the quotes, and I gave this 5 stars. The quotes that I have for this, it says, I have compassion for myself. I trust myself. I don't regret it. Because I know I had my reasons and I did the best I could with every thought and feeling that led up to it. And then the next quote is, I'm under absolutely no obligation to make sense to you. Both of those are said by Miss Evelyn Hugo. She's fabulous. And so my next superlative is most likely to translate well into a limited TV series or movie. Again, I already talked about this, but that's Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. But also another TJR book, Carrie Soto is Back. I saw this over the summer in Barnes & Noble. I wanted to read another TJR book because Evelyn Hugo was so good, and it was like the pacing was great. Like it wasn't one of those books where I finished a chapter or a page and I looked to see how many I have to go. Like I wanted to keep reading, so I wanted that experience during the summer. I saw this in Barnes & Noble. The cover was a little bit torn, so they gave me a discount. But I bought it, I read it, and it was great. It wasn't as good as Seven Husbands, but it was great. I think it's cool how Taylor writes her books. I mean, I think a lot of people probably do this, but like you could tell the difference between like Evelyn narrating her story and Carrie narrating her own, because Carrie had a very like dry personality. That kind of threw me off, but it was just really good. And I have a short background in tennis. I know a little bit about the sport, so it was really cool to read about the matches. I felt like this would be so good on the big screen or on a small screen, on some kind of screen, because the descriptions, like it's just, I love it. First of all, I'm a nerd. I love research. I love a well-researched book, and I can tell that Taylor Jenkins Reid puts so much, like she researches so much when it comes to her books, and it makes them feel so authentic, and I love that, which is why I'm very excited to read Atmosphere this year. But yeah, so this was great, and the quote that I have from this is actually a conversation between Carrie Soto and her dad, Javier, and this is when she's young and he's coaching her. He says, do not let what anyone says about you determine how you feel about yourself. I looked at him. If I say your hair is purple, does that mean it's purple, he asked. No, it's brown. Does that mean you have to prove to me it's brown? I shook my head. No, you can see it is. He says, you are going to be one of the greatest tennis players in the world someday, Carino. That is as true as your brown hair. You don't need to show them. You just need to be. And this is why I love reading, because I'll read something and then I'll read something that's like speaking to me. Because these books, the reason these books are so great is because they speak to something in all of us, that human, I was going to say the human part of all of us, but we're all human. But like the humanity in all of us, like we all deal with the same things, just in different fonts. And I love that. That's why I love pulling the quotes out of it. So the next superlative I have is best dressed or best cover, and that is Matriarch by Tina Knowles. Don't remember what I rated this book. It's possible that this might be below a 4-star. It was very cool to read about Tina. Very, very cool to hear about Destiny's Child and Beyonce, because I grew up on that. I would say that it's very lengthy. Like it's over 400 pages. I think it's maybe like right over the 400 page mark. And I don't think it's somebody's life. It probably could be that long, but it got to a point to where it was like the structure and the organization just felt like it was just a little cluttered. She was trying to fit a lot in, and we were losing the thread of like a good memoir or autobiography, I think, has like this common thread throughout. And she did that with the whole matriarch thing. Like she was a daughter, then she was a wife, then she was a mother, and then she's herself, because her daughters and stuff have grown up and she's gotten divorced. So I think that was a really cool thread to, weave throughout the story. But there was just so much in there, and we all wanted to hear about Destiny's Child, and that took up a lot of the story. I don't know. There was something about it that was just, I was ready for it to end, honestly. But it was not bad. It was good. I did enjoy it. I love the pictures because there's like two different sections with a lot of pictures in them. And I love that. But it was good. But I just wanted to include it here because this cover is gorgeous, like beautiful. And if you love memoirs and autobiographies, read it. If you love Destiny's Child, Beyonce, read it. If you are an introverted person who wants to feel a little bit, loved on and seen in this book, read it because I loved hearing about that aspect of Beyonce. So that's Matriarch. And the quote that I have from this one says, and this spoke to me, I loved it. It says, instead of changing yourself to become someone's idea of a boss, you can remain who you are as success brings new challenges and goals. And I love that. I recently started a new job that in other people's minds are probably for extroverts, and I'm an introvert. But I'm going to be my introverted self and do this job very well because we introverts can connect with people too, okay? My next book is Best Debut. This didn't come out this year, but I read it this year, and this was this author's first book. I don't think it came out this year. And that is Grown Women by Sarah Johnson. I know it looks like Sarai, but she stated that her name is pronounced Sarah. This book is a generational tale between, I think it's 3 generations of women. The great-grandmother, the grandmother, and 4 generations of women. Yes. And it's set in, I want to say like the 90s into the early 2000s. So it was very nostalgic for me to read. But basically these 3 older generations of women all come together. They put their differences aside because they've been through a lot with each other to raise the youngest child. They want her to have a better life. Her name is Camille. They want her to have a better life than they all did. So they pour a lot into her. And with that pouring up into her comes a lot of pressures and expectations for her. And I really identify with this story for multiple reasons. Like, I am the youngest child. I am of her generation. So the things that she was growing up with and seeing, I also grew up with and saw MySpace and all of that stuff. And then the fact that, you have these generations of women behind you who want you to be better than they were and are pouring into you, you feel that pressure. I felt that too. There are some very dark themes in this book. Assault, grape, I guess is how we say that, assault. And it can be very triggering if you don't have like a good relationship with your mom. I would be cautious reading it, but it's also, it can be very, I don't know if I would call it healing because in some ways I think it is. It's really up to you what you get out of it, but it was very well written. Like, Sarah Johnson is talented. She's very talented. Her writing is awesome. It's phenomenal. It was very immersive. We read this in book club and I think everybody loved it. I think some people might have thought that it might have been too long, but I don't think that at all. It was under 400 pages, almost, but underneath it. And the quote that I have from this one is, there are 2 quotes actually. It says, yes, she belonged to them, talking about Camille belonging to the woman who raised her, in that they were in her bones, body, and soul. But she was not theirs, and they were not hers. And then the second quote says, Camille was smart. And I like to interchange Camille's name with my name in this one. It says, Camille was smart. She would be okay. If she wasn't, at least she was doing what no one before her had, whatever she wanted to. That in and of itself was rewarding. And I love that quote because it's like, there's so many pressures and expectations put on newer generations because the older generations want them to succeed and do well and be better. But it's like, the goal should not be for perfection or for exactly what you want them to do. You want people to have choices. You want them to have the option to say, hey, I want to work in corporate America 9 to 5, or I want to travel the world for a year. If they're able to make the choice, then you've won. And I love that quote for that reason. I think that's what we need to think about a little bit more when it comes to what success looks like. Do you have a choice? Do you have a choice? Okay. This was great. 5 stars. Best debut. And then last but totally not least, now y'all, this was my last read of the year. You can probably see the cover. I might not be doing a really good job hiding it. This was my very last read of the year. Okay? Last read of the year. And it became my best read. This maybe should have been my sleeper hit, but I knew it was good because it has like 4.5, like a 4.5 average rating on Goodreads, and it has over like a million reviews, so that's a really good rating. So I read it, and the reason that I read this book is because it was around Christmas time. I was in a mood. I didn't feel like reading like the cute, like Christmassy books like I did last year. I wanted to read something a little bit more, a little darker, a little deeper, a little more oomph to the story. And so this one, if you know, you know. It's by Kristen Hanna. So guess if you feel so inclined. But this one I wanted to read because it's set in the 1970s, and it's about this family that relocates from Seattle, Washington to Alaska. So I'm like, Alaska? It's December right now. It's really cold outside, so maybe this book will be good. It's also historical fiction, so I don't know why I put historical fiction in like the fall and winter months, which I like to read them. So yeah. Anyway, I put it on my list of books that I wanted to read before the end of 2025, and I actually got to it. I saw it at my local library. I picked it up, got it, and I marathoned it at the end of the year because I realized that I had read 30 books, and if I finished this one, then I would have 31. So I finished this one on December 30th, and again, it was amazing. 5 stars, became my best read of the year, and that is Kristen Hanna's The Great Alone. Oh my gosh, y'all, I cried like a baby when I finished this book, or while I was getting like to the end of it. Like I cried, and they were the most cathartic, like cleansing, like soul cleansing tears I have ever cried. The most pure. The book has so much going on. First of all, the atmosphere of it being in Alaska, that's just a really cool place. The fact that they have like 18-hour days and sometimes 18-hour nights. Their winters are so harsh. People are living off the land. The northern lights are up there. It's just so cool because I've not been there. So first of all, it was cool to read about that. Second of all, I really like historical fiction. Now, I will say that because most of the book, they're in this remote place, there's no like references to what's happening in the world besides mentions of the Vietnam War and stuff like that. So I kind of kept forgetting that we are in the 70s until the Vietnam War was mentioned. So there's that. I do like historical fiction, as we know. There's some difficult subject matter in the book. There is violence, like domestic violence, war trauma. There's been so many times I'm realizing as an adult how messed up the Vietnam War was, because it started off with This Is Us. That's when I started like realizing, because I'm starting to hear more about the Vietnam War in popular culture. Basically, I'll tell you what it's about without giving it away. There's no way I can give it away because there's just it broke my heart and put it back together. But it's about this family, the Albrights. They live in Seattle, Washington. It's a family of 3. So there's Lenny, the daughter. There is Cora, the wife, and then there's Ernst, the husband. Ernst is a Vietnam War veteran. He was a prisoner of war. His helicopter was shot down, and he was captured and then released, and he saw some terrible things that messed him up mentally. He did not get the help he needed, so when he came home, he was with his family, and he was a ticking time bomb most of the time. My problem with Ernst is that I work in the mental health space. My thing is that, we want to destigmatize mental health. We want people to not feel ashamed to get help. But also in this book, I was very angry with him because it's like when you realize the very first time that something was off or wrong with you, but then I have to think about the time period. It was the 70s. Things were not like how they are now. Let me not get ahead of myself. But I was getting mad. I was like, okay, something is wrong. Like, instead of taking it out on your family, like, leave and go do something about it so you don't keep hurting them. Because he was in there, like the bad things would take over and he would do things, but he was in his mind. Anyway, so when the weather's bad, as you know, like with a lot of us, when it gets cold and dark, we all get into that seasonal depression, but it's like worse for him. And so he left Seattle because when he was in Vietnam, he had a friend who passed was killed, and left him land in Alaska. So they go up there. very unprepared, but they find a community who welcomes them in. And at first it's all good because, again, in Alaska, the days can be very long, but also the winters and the nights are eventually going to be very long. So even though it's okay at first, as time goes on, it gets bad, it gets dangerous, and lots of things happen. Lots of things. There's a coming of age story in here. It's about family, it's about community, it's about love, it's about found family. It's about mother-daughter relationships. It's about healing generational like hurts and traumas. And it was just amazingly done. And also the author, Kristen Hanna, if you don't know, she used to be an attorney. So the fact there's like something in here that requires knowledge of the law, and that was written so well. So like her expertise definitely came in like great there. My only pet peeve about the book was that in the middle, I wanted to quit it because I felt like, okay, we get it. It's Alaska. It's cold. The descriptions felt very repetitive. But when the book revved up, it revved up. And it went from me wanting to give this book a 3.75 to 5 star. Like, it went from 0 to 100 really quick. It was so good. It was so good. And I think a lot of people might say the romance was their favorite part. But my favorite part was just the exploration of a flawed relationship between mother and daughter, and how that is like our moms and their kids, or kids and their moms. Those are the loves of our lives, not necessarily our romantic partner, who they're great, but it's like, you know, is anybody gonna love you like your mom loves you? She birthed you, you know? And there's some flaws there. It was really hard to read. I was getting mad at the mom, but also at the end of the book, I had to call my own mom and be like, look, mom, you know, it was just really good. So this was my best read of the year, The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. I'm excited to read more of her work in 2025, in 2026. I'm going to be messing that up for a little bit. But yeah, I wanted to share that with you guys and take a little thumbnail picture. So these are the best books. These are my best reads of 2025. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great reading year in 2026. Please let me know what you loved in 2025. I would love to check that out and maybe add that to my TBR for this year. I have no reading goal. I'm actually going to set it to 1 on Goodreads because I don't want to feel the pressure to read. I just want to read as it comes. Maybe that'll help me read more. I don't know. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to hear what you guys have read, what you're excited about reading, and I hope you have a very fruitful, prosperous, blessed, protected 2026. See you next time.